Hey, Sean, you've talked before about how Parcells was maybe the most demanding or most difficult to work for when you were going good and on a win streak. And I'm curious, do you find yourself in that same mode as you've won three in a row, or just how do you, when you think about feeling out where your team's at right now, where do you peg that?
Um, well, first, I think you got to be yourself, but I do think, and I know why there were certain things being around Bill long enough to know why they applied, and so paying attention to the details, understanding human nature, all of those things. I thought we practiced well yesterday. Today will be another big day. It's third down, so today's like a Thursday for us. But yeah, I would say that there's certain things I learned that I would utilize.
Okay, she's not here. Daddy's here.
Sorry about that, Coach. Go ahead, Troy.
Coach, when I look at the stats and watch Minnesota, they're blitzing at almost an historical rate with Coach Flores. What is the challenge with that? And it looks like sometimes they're bringing the house and they'll drop with 8 in coverage.
I chuckled here for a second because for the last 48 hours, we've looked at all the tape. Clearly, from a pressure standpoint, if you just looked at any analytical study, there's more 6-man pressure. We chart if 4-man's the normal rush, a single pressure would be 5. There's more 6, 7 max blitzes. They come out of them. They really force your hand a little bit, and you've got to. We talked about communication being important. I mentioned that, man, in this type of game, I'm glad we're playing it at home, because the communication obviously becomes harder on the road with the silent snap count and the gun. But, our tempo and then ID, but what you're seeing and what you saw and what you're discussing is absolutely true. So at first blush, call it the first 6 hours, you go get another coffee and you start again. And here we are on day 2 and it gets clearer and clearer and clearer. But that being said, certainly when we go through keys to victory, one of them on offense is, understanding communication, knowing what we're getting out of their penny front, what we're getting out of their nickel front, and identifying, what kind of pressure it is. But it can be busy and noisy when you first look at it.
Go ahead, Zach.
Hey, Coach, last week you mentioned that Russ has been in 3 different offenses in the past 3 years. And I was curious how long it takes for a quarterback to get comfortable in a new offense and where Russ is at that point, you think?
Yeah, look, I think he's kind of on pace. He's doing well. There's certain things he's learning. I think we're evolving a little bit relative to what we do offensively. I don't think there's any set time frame like most quarterbacks have it by. I think it's a little bit of something that moves in a direction, and it's not only just centered around the quarterback, it's also centered around who's playing running back, tight end, and receiver. And so I said yesterday at the podium, we're not we're not a finished product yet. There's still a number of things we got to clean up, and that's that's why we're going out again today, and that's why we're working and trying to improve each day during the week.
Go ahead, Eric.
Coach, when you brought Fabian Moreau in training camp, I guess what was the vision for him then? And then what has he brought to this defense over the last couple of weeks here since he's been inserted in the lineup?
Yeah, veteran corner with a lot of playing experience. He's also helped on special teams. So, you kind of had two different roles, kicking game and then on defense. And we felt like his experience would be real beneficial. He played a lot last year for New York. He's smart. Really liked the visit, and then you kind of let things unfold, and now he's playing a lot more. He's doing well. He had a good pick the other night, but you're talking about someone who's smart and instinctive, and you have a vision for it. It becomes easy.
Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Sean, what are some of the attributes in your estimation that make Alex Singleton such a good tackler? I mean, he's leading you guys in tackling, has a lot of double-digit efforts so far this season.
Yeah, well, so he's a productive tackler. I was ready for you to say this is his tackling efficiency number relative to when he's attempting to tackle. But I think the very first thing, it's the same thing that made him a good special teams player. You know, generally speaking, guys that play well on special teams have good instincts. They can kind of feel leverage. You take a path, take the correct pursuit angle. And Alex is one of those guys. He's got good football instincts, obviously good football IQ, and an important trait, I think, for an inside linebacker is the ability to key and then diagnose. And, you know, the guys that can begin to deduce and begin to eliminate what they have to defend and know it's going to only be this or that based on the formation and the backfield set, you know, he's one of those guys.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Hey, Sean, you talked a little about Quinn Miners yesterday, and Quinn was saying in the locker room that he added 10 to 15 pounds this year, some of it of his own belief and some of it of the team encouraging him. So when you're evaluating offensive linemen and studying the film, how do you get to the process where you say, okay, you need to add a few pounds or you need to lose a few pounds to make them be where you want them to be?
Yeah, that's a good question because we have those discussions in the spring. I'm always hesitant initially of this, we need to add, like I want to know, I'm hesitant, especially when we're talking about receivers and running backs. You know, I like a lot of times their college weight. And I understand the difference between, you know, adding lean muscle. But I've seen a lot of mistakes made where either receivers, running backs, deep, you know, guys get too heavy. All right. That being said, you know, what's the chassis or the frame on an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman? And there's really this important kind of, you'd say, window of weight before injuries pick up, before the player all of a sudden, you know, so I think a lot of it has to do with their height, weight, their chassis, you know, how they're built. And, you know, to his credit, I mean, he works his tail off in the off season. I mean, he's extremely powerful, and you can see that on film.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, Sean, I know you've seen a lot of rookie receivers. Where's Jordan Addison stack up for you?
Oh, gosh, that'd be hard to. I mean, look, he's. Here's the thing. I would say this. I think it's a position that's hard to come into our league and play right away. I think if you took last year's draft class and say, call it, let's just say the first 2 rounds. I don't know how many receivers were taken. I'm going to say 50% right now, give or take, are like, man, they're playing and contributing. Jordan, you know, the kid at Houston, just go on down the line. And the other 50% might take a minute. And depending on the offense, some of these offenses they're coming from, they just lined up left outside or right outside. You know, in other words, now we're saying you're going to be here in pro, here in slot, you know. And so it's the one thing we try to do a lot when we're looking at receivers is kind of gauge where they're at mentally and what that transition is going to be like. Like I've had experience on both cases where Robert Meacham, it took him a year. And then, man, did he come on? And then Mike Thomas, it was immediate. And so I think it can vary. So back to Addison, man, shoot, if you're Minnesota and you're seeing the way he's playing right now, I mean, you saw a pro-style offense with him. You saw the route tree, and you had a great feel for some of his strengths. And now he's transitioned, you know, very quickly to what they're doing. So, I think that's all good news, you know, when you're looking at a rookie receiver. Because I think back to that first 2 round discussion, I'll bet there's a handful of teams that are kind of like, all right, I hope next year's better.
Go ahead, Parker.
Yeah, hey, Sean, speaking of receivers, we saw after you talked yesterday, we saw Jerry Jeudy had popped up on the injury report. Sort of what's his status, I suppose, going forward?
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. He was limited yesterday. He'll practice today, and I think Ben will practice today as well. So, all right, all good, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Coach. We appreciate the time.